Okay, just so you know, I'm talking about how replacement theology has affected the Sabbath being changed. I've been studying this for many, many years, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. The Sabbath is a book by Abraham Joshua Heschel, who died decades ago. But it's a phenomenal book if anyone wants to get it and look into it more. And David Krupman, who's spoken here many times, he's the one that came up with your Sabbath invitation, and it's called Partnership in God's Ultimate Celebration. So I want everyone to know, I always like giving credit where credit is due. And as you know, replacement theology, it has turned Yeshua from this into this. That's what replacement theology does. Now, how many of you know that there is a time to go to bed, a time to wake up, a time to have breakfast, a time to go to work, a time to come home, a time to catch the bus, okay, and a time to eat, and a time to go to bed again? All of our life is based on what? What time is it? That is everybody's focus, is what time is it? So in referring to the Sabbath being changed, it is really all about timing. How many of you know if you're going to get married, the bride and groom better agree on a time? Okay, that's very important. Time is the heart of existence. The Bible is more concerned with time than it is with space. I'm going to talk about that more. But let me ask you this. What was the first thing called holy in the Bible? The time was. The Sabbath time. Time was called first. What was the second thing called holy? A people, Israel. And the third thing called holy was a place. All right, so in God's mind, time is the most important. And then you have people, and then we have a place. Now, listen to Genesis 2:3. It says, God blessed the seventh day and he sanctified it. So right there is, we find that the Sabbath is the very first thing that God called holy. In Exodus 31:3, it says, speak to the children of Israel and say, my Sabbaths, whose Sabbaths? God, not Israel's. God says, my Sabbaths, I want you to keep. It's a sign between me and you. It's kind of like a wedding ring. Okay, like a wedding ring is a sign when two people get married. The Sabbath was the wedding ring. And it says, throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord that does what? Sanctify you. Okay, so the first thing sanctified was time. The second thing sanctified was a people. And then in Exodus 25:8, he says, let them make me what? A sanctuary. That would be a holy place that I can dwell among them. But notice this. He says, according to all that I'm going to show you, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments, even so shall you make it. We have to understand everything on earth that we see is a pattern after what is in heaven. Okay? That means they're keeping the Sabbath in heaven. You following me? And we don't want to be out of sync with heaven. That's what's so important. Here is mankind's problem. We spend all of our time trying to acquire things and fill space. We think that we are successful if we have more things and more space, and all of our time is spent doing that. As a matter of fact, pagan deities were all about idols and places. Religions are dominated by the notions that some deity resides in some space, like mountains or rivers, stones, or geographic places. The black Kaaba stone, okay, that all the Arabs worship. They have a particular place in this big stone and the like. their deities of other peoples were always associated with a place or a thing. But guess what? The Bible is concerned about time and events that are to be memorable. The God of Israel is the God of events. We know him as the Redeemer from slavery, the revealer of the Torah, manifesting himself in the events of history rather than in things or places. The Bible is about a relationship of time aiming at the sanctification of time. When we sanctify time, everything else falls into place. Now, here's what's important. The Sabbath is not determined by any event in nature. Okay? The new moon is based on the cycles of the moon, right? Passover, Sukkot, full moon, Rosh Hashanah, new moon. But the Sabbath itself is not determined by any event in nature. It was solely an act of creation. God created the Shabbat. And so on the Sabbath, we turn from the world of creation to the creation of the world. Now, there's some religious people out there, the lunar Sabbatarians, not to make fun of them, but I think more the loony Sabbatarians. But they believe the Sabbath changes constantly based on the moon. No. And I'll talk about this more a little bit later, but in Egypt, when Israel was there in Egypt, they had a 10-day calendar. And in Europe, around the time of Napoleon, they had a 10-day calendar. Some nations did. Russia, I think, tried a 10-day calendar. A lot of people want to change the calendar, but guess what? God created it this way. It's not based on the sun. It's not based on the moon. How do you imagine Israel kept the seventh-day Sabbath when they were in Egypt using a 10-day calendar? I mean, think about it. They had 3 10-day weeks. That's 30. We know there's 30 or 31 days in a month. So they had 12 months with 3 10-day increments. But Israel's trying to keep the Sabbath in the middle of all of that. Now, to the Romans, technical civilization was the highest goal. And time existed for the sake of filling space, building the Colosseums, all these things. They saw time as a way to get space and fill it. And here's what's important. To the person who is only space-minded, all the days and all the hours are alike. Every day's the Sabbath. Okay? That tells you where their thinking is. The primary awareness is of us being in the Sabbath. And what I mean by that, first I want to say this. To sanctify the Sabbath or to set it apart doesn't mean to mortify yourself. Actually, it means to have the best food, wear beautiful garments, delight yourself, and have fun. But people don't understand the Sabbath. They see it as some burden. Well, we need to realize, just like a sukkah, you can go in the sukkah, but you can go out of the sukkah, but we are to see the Sabbath more like a bubble that is surrounding us everywhere that we go. So the primary awareness is of us being in the Sabbath, okay? And it surrounds us everywhere we go. Our world is a world of space moving through time. Let me give you an example. Here we go. What's moving? And in this picture, what does it look like is moving? The land. The tracks, but also notice how it looks like. How many of you have ever been in a car at a gas station and all of a sudden you think you're rolling? You know what I'm talking about? Well, so often, if you're in a train, passenger train, and you're going down, it almost looks like you're still and everything else is moving. You know what I'm talking about? Or in a plane and you're looking down. What we need to realize is that our world that we live in is a world of space that is moving through time. A world of space and things are all perishing within time. We perish. Time never perishes. We perish through time. Time's not moving. We're moving. We're moving through time. We know what to do with space, but we don't know what to do with time. Time to us is the dreaded monster staring us in the face, okay? Think of it this way. How long ago did everyone think the sun was moving around the world, rather than the fact the sun stood still and we were moving around it? Well, what I'm going to do today is do a paradigm shift in our thinking of what's moving and what's not moving. We know that, let me go here and show you this. Boom, here we go. Man wants to build great cathedrals. This is the Crystal Cathedral on the right. You know, they have a little river right in the middle of it with some bushes and all this kind of thing. But we think of time as the giant incinerator that takes every moment of our lives. So what do? We run to the shelter of space. To the space-minded person, the material world becomes the great cathedrals. But in the Bible, the Sabbaths are our great cathedrals. Time itself. That's what really matters. All the Sabbaths, every one of them is time dependent. Okay, there were set sacrifices, set prayers that were time dependent. All the main themes of our faith are time dependent. You can't meet any time. Can Passover be any time? Can Passover be any day? Can Yom Kippur be any time and any day? Think about that. How important time is. Can you go to work any time of the night or day? What? Everything in our world, and sometimes we don't realize it, is time dependent. We are to remember times in the Bible. The time of creation, the time of the Exodus. That's what Passover is all about. Remember these times. And we will remember the time of the resurrection of the dead. So the higher goal of spirituality is not to amass an accumulation of stuff. But how many of you know how important it is? What it's really about in spirituality is to face and to cherish sacred moments. How many of you remember moments when you loved somebody and someone loved you and what you may forget all the other stuff, but there's moments in time that you cherish that you don't ever want to forget. That's what the Bible is all about. It's not cherishing the stuff, it's cherishing the people. Does that make sense? That's what it is all about. We must not forget that it is not the thing that lends significance to the moment, it is the moment that lends significance to the things. Does that make sense? Look at Ecclesiastes 3, 1 and 2. To everything there is a season and a what? A time. To every purpose under the heaven. Every purpose. Do you realize what that means? You were created on purpose. You were created, God created you on purpose, and He decides what time it is for you to appear on the scene. You could have appeared any time in history, 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, but God made you on purpose. That's how valuable you are. And He made you for this time in history. And the problem is, if we don't know what time it is, we'll be planting at plucking time and plucking at planting time. And that's what we need to know. God gave us 6,000 years from Adam. We are right there, and we are at the time of the redemption. And if we don't know what time it is, we're not going to get ready. That's the problem with Noah's flood, with Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. They didn't know what time it was. That's why I want everyone to know what time it is. Look at Exodus 19:1. If you remember Exodus 19:1, what's going on in Exodus 19 and Exodus 20? It's Shabbat and the giving of the commandments. Okay? And what do we find? It was in the 3rd month of the going out of the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt. And then it says in this, this isn't on your notes. I think I added this. I added some verses. So you can take a pen and write it in. I just realized everyone's looking for it. But write that in. And I think this is so important, this verse. I get up early in the morning and I end up adding things after they printed it. Sorry. Okay, Exodus 19:1. Listen to the verse. It says, in the third month, the going out of the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt, in this day they have come into the wilderness of Sinai. That's not what it says in the Hebrew. We would think it should say, why not on that day? It was on that day. How come it says, no, it's in this day? The reason why is the giving of the Torah can never become a thing of the past. It's always in the now. It's always in the present. Just like at Passover, if you remember during the Haggadah, we have to talk about how that as if we were the ones that came out of Egypt. It's the same concept. Look at Matthew 20, verse 9 and 10. If you remember, there are those who came out that were hired about the 11th hour, and they received everyone a penny, but when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. And what happens? They were all what? Mad. Okay, so some people spent all day working, and other people just an hour, but they got the same wage. And the question is that fair? Well, guess what is a common saying? That there are those who can gain eternity through a lifetime and others gain it in 1 hour. Better is 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world than eternity in the world to come. Because you can, like it says in Ezekiel, you can spend your whole life being bad, but if you repent, God will forget everything that you've done in the past, and you're like a brand new person. In eternity, you can't change. It's fixed. But there are others who can live their whole life in righteousness, and at the end, they turn from God, want nothing to do with them, and none of their righteousness is remembered either. So in other words, what this parable is saying, how it doesn't matter. The person that repents, okay, and turns to God receives this in 1 hour is the same as one who works all day and doing righteous things. How many of you know we can control our space? Like this is my space, maybe 3 foot around me, and I try to control my space, or this is my house. Okay, don't come in my yard. Get your dog out of my yard. Okay, we try to control our space, but can anyone control time? None. God gives each one of us an equal amount of time until we leave this world. But here's what I want you to think of. Creation was not an act that happened once upon a time. Creation is a continuous process. The only reason we are still alive and creation didn't end is because God continues to keep creation going. Creation wasn't just an act of history. It happens every moment, every day. God supports the universe. Now, most of us have a lifespan of about 75 years. That's an average. I know some people get to be over 100 and some people die at 20. But the average lifespan, they say, is about 75 years, right? How do we spend our time? Let me give you basic math. If you sleep 8 hours a day, over 75 years, you will have slept 25 years. 75 years of your life, 25 years will be spent sleeping if you sleep 8 hours a day. Well, guess what else? If you work 8 hours a day and you add your commute, your 31 years is working and commuting out of your 75 years. You got to eat. You spend 6 years eating over 75 years. Do you realize if you live 75 years, that gives you about 13 years left to spend? Isn't that crazy when you look at the math? I mean, of course, some people's commute is shorter and some are longer. I'm just giving you the average. Wow, that's a lot of years, isn't it? Well, guess what? If you pray 10 minutes a day, that's 190 days out of your 75 years. If you go to church 1 day a week for 2 hours, that's 325 days out of your 75 years. I mean, this was just a shocking thing when I was looking at it. I don't know if it affects you at all, but it's like how we only have so much time and how we spend this time. How many of you know someone on their deathbed doesn't wish they had gotten more stuff? They wish they had spent more time with the people they love. Time is the essence. Time and relationship is what it's all about. So let's go to Leviticus 23, verse 2 and 3. It says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, concerning the feasts of the Lord, you are to proclaim to be holy assemblies. Even these are whose feasts again? My feasts, not the Jewish feasts. These are my feasts. And here's what's crazy. Leviticus 23 talks about all the appointed times. The Hebrew word for feast is what? The moed, or in plural, the moedim, which means appointed times. And the very first appointed time is not Passover, it's the Sabbath. That's the very first moedim. It's the Sabbath. 6 days there's work to be done, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy assembly. Don't do any work. It's the Sabbath of who? The Lord. Okay, how many Sabbaths are there in a year? There's a lot more than 52. Because the Sabbath isn't just the Shabbat, first day of Passover and last day of Passover. First day of Sukkot and the last day of Sukkot. Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat. Okay, so there's all, when you think here the word Sabbaths, keep my Sabbaths, he's not talking just about the 7th day. He's talking about all the appointed times. And look at Colossians 2, 16 and 17. He's speaking to the Colossians, and he says, let no one judge you in food or drink or respect of a holy day, the new moon, the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Messiah. He's telling the Colossians, don't let these Galatians who've gone back to the pagan calendar judge you because you are keeping the appointed times. This isn't saying, let no man judge you because you're not keeping them. It's saying, let no one judge you because you are keeping these appointed times. Okay, here comes something that's kind of heavy. How many of you know everything's based on a pattern? On earth and on heaven. That means, here it talks about these are shadows of things to come. The written Torah is the shadow of the heavenly Torah. Think about that. There is a heavenly Torah. Yeshua is the living Torah. All right? The written Torah refers to the invisible, unwritten heavenly Torah. Israel received, think about this too. What Israel received on Sinai was the real operating system of the world in a download. So they could connect to God in a more profound way than any humans ever had in history. So God gives the written Torah as like a download, and so now they have the physical Torah, and they're trying to connect to the heavenly Torah that's in the cloud, so to speak. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a test. This is only a test. How many days did God work? Well, I have 3 different translations here. Let's go to the Young's literal translation at Genesis 2:2. Here it said, God completed everything God completed by the 7th day, the work which he had made, and he ceased by the 7th day from all his work which he had done. But now look at King James Version. On the 7th day, God ended his work. Well, if you read on the 7th day he ended his work, that much you think he must have worked on the 7th day. Isn't that interesting how translations in English aren't that good? Well, look at the Jewish Publication Society's version. And on the 7th day, God finished his work. Well, no, wait a minute. That also makes it sound like he worked on the 7th day. What's the answer? Well, it's kind of interesting. And this goes back. I can only give you part of the answer for the moment, but I'm going to give you the rest of the answer at the end. What happened is the 6th day, if you remember, it happens at what? Sunset. And this is what's crazy. You're going to see this, is that Where do I have this? Where do I have it? I almost want to jump to it. It is so insane. I may jump ahead for just a moment because, I have it. I know where it is. Here, just one second. Let me find this. How many of you know in your Bible or in a Torah scroll there are no chapters or verses? Okay, this is toward the very end, and I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you right now. I think I added it anyway, so you can't cheat. Listen to Genesis 1:31 through 2, verse 2. I say this because there are no chapters or verse breaks in the Torah scroll. And listen to this. It's just crazy. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. So everything was finished on the sixth day. So why did he need a seventh day? I already spoke that. Why did he take 7 days? Why didn't he create it all in one day? Why didn't he take 10 days? Why 5 days? Did something happen on the sixth day that caused him to create a seventh day? Okay, all of a sudden, man's already created. Adam and Eve are there. And they say that seventh day, which was created, he created the seventh day. So therefore, on the seventh day, something was created. You following me? He also created the seventh day. Now, what they say happened at sunset of the sixth day, simultaneously, he finished his work and created the seventh day at the same time because it's evening and morning. So they say that it was simultaneous. The creation of the seventh day happened at the end of the sixth day because it goes from sunrise to sunset on the day before. So they say the Sabbath day was created at the very end of the sixth day, as if it was really needed. Well, now we're going to jump back and we'll come back to this. But now we're going to go back to where we were while we're talking about this. Okay. But let me just explain one more time. The Shabbat did not happen as a process of time. When we think of that seventh day, the Shabbat didn't happen as a process of time, but it was created. Okay? Now, in Genesis chapter 5, verse 29, we know about the situation with Noah. And he's called Noah because he will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord had cursed. When did the Lord curse the ground? At Adam and Eve, okay? And this has been about 1,600 years later is the flood. But look at this. The Sabbath was created before the curse. The Sabbath was created before the ground was cursed and they had to do any toil. Right? We read about the Sabbath, but then we also at the same time read about Adam and Eve sinning and the curse. But the Sabbath was created before the curse. Okay? It was a time of shalom and building relationships with each other and with the Creator. This is why God created the Sabbath for all of humanity, not just the Jewish people. We see that in Genesis when he creates the Sabbath. Now, look at this. Everyone know the first word there? Breshit. This is the first word of the Bible, in the beginning. But do you know, if you separate the blue and the white letters, you get to be in awe of the Shabbat. The very word, in the beginning, from the beginning, God wanted us all to be in awe of the time in history. This is the time when everything began, and he wanted us to be in awe of the Shabbat. I've showed you all kinds of other things I pulled out of that. But here's the thing. The Moedim always existed even before the Exodus and Moses. In Genesis 1:14, at creation, God made the sun, the moon, and the stars for what? Signs and the Moedim. The feast, not winter, spring, summer, fall, but so God from the very beginning made all the appointed times. Okay, time is the first thing that was holy, but it wasn't just the Sabbath, it was the Sabbaths. All the appointed times that were to meet with him was from the beginning. Therefore, Adam and Eve knew the appointed times. Adam and Eve kept the appointed times, all of them. At the very time things happened. Look at this. In Genesis 26:5, Abraham knew. Look at 26:5. It's because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, my laws. He kept all of the Torah. There were things that God added in Exodus, but everything, all of the Torah pre-existed, and Abraham knew them. Well, not only that, look at Genesis 19:3 as we go backwards. This is when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. And it says he pressed upon the angels greatly, and they turned into him, entered his house, and he made them a feast and did bake unleavened bread. Guess what? This happened at Passover. This very event happened during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is telling you the set time. As a matter of fact, if you remember, what did God tell Abraham? He said, you're going to have a little baby at this set time. It was the same time Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, at Passover, which is why in Genesis 21:2, the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken, for Sarah conceived, bare Abraham a son in his old age at the set time. And guess what the Hebrew word for set time is? Moed. This wasn't at any time. This was the set time of Passover. That's why he was making unleavened bread. They knew it was Passover long before Passover event happened. Because God had already taught them. And they were doing a dress rehearsal for when the dress rehearsal for us was going to happen, because everything is cyclical. It's not linear. Christians think linearly. You have to think cyclically. There are different words for time in Hebrew. You can take a picture of this if you want to. One of them is zmanim, which means a span of time. Then there's a atim, which means a point in time or a duration of time. And finally, a moedim, which means a fixed time, a set time. It is not a random time. Now that is very important. Okay? If it's a set time, you can't change Passover. If it's a set time, you can't change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. That's what the Sabbath is. It is a prefix set time that can't be changed. Now, the seventh day, the Shabbat, is different than all of the weekdays. Matter of fact, when they would count days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was long later than the Bible. What the Bible did, they would always say, this is the first day toward the Shabbat. This is the second day toward the Shabbat. This is the third day toward the Shabbat, fourth, fifth, sixth. And it was to build anticipation for the Shabbat. Think of when a loved one is gone for a week and you can hardly wait for them to come back. You go, wow, this is the sixth day till they come back. The fifth day, the fourth day, the second day. And you can hardly wait for them to come back and finally give them a hug. That's how we're to treat the Shabbat. We're to count, wow, this is the first day toward the Shabbat. Everything should be focused toward the time that God is going to spend time with us. If we decide to change the Sabbath to the first day of the week, wow, before I say that, I got to show you a slide. Now remember, the Sabbath is the only day that was blessed or sanctified, okay? Let me show you this here. Okay, here we go. In other words, Sabbath and Passover cannot be moved. Like sometimes in Christianity, it's a month before the resurrection, or the Easter's a month before he dies. Okay, so here we are. I got rid of the Sunday Mondays, and I put in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and the 7th. Now, Adam was created on the 6th day, so that is the 1st of Tishri, and then comes the Shabbat. Okay, the first day, if you remember, was total chaos. Okay, it was void, tohu and vohu, just a waste of time. And God separates it, and he brings light and darkness, and he separates it. And then it's chaos. The first day is complete chaos. And then the second day, he separates the waters from the waters. And then on the third day, he brings out all of the land and the trees, and he separates the water. And then on the fourth day, we have the creation of the sun and the moon. And then on the fifth day, you can see this big dolphin jumping out of the water. You got all the whales and sea creatures. And then on the sixth day, man is created. And then the seventh day is the Shabbat. Okay, well, guess what? If we decide to change the seventh day to the first day of the week, we transfer a day that has been sanctified and blessed to a day that was originally dominated by chaos. Fascinating. Listen to Isaiah. Look at where I'm at. Let me make sure. Let me show you one more thing here. Okay, what is the word on the far right? Breshit. In the beginning, the first word of the Bible, kind of like B-R-A-S-H-I-T, Breshit. But within Breshit is the word bara. The second word of your Bible is bara. So in the beginning, created God, the heavens and the earth, right? There's something about bara, which means to create, no human can do. Only God can bara. And only he can do that. Man can create all kinds of things, but he can kind of do it with nothing. Okay? Man can't do that. But here's what's fascinating. The word bara, create, also implies authority. Okay? Do the parents name the kids, or do the kids name the parents? The parents name the kids because they have the authority. Does the neighbor name your dog or cat, or do you name your dog or cat? You do, because you have the authority. And God is the one and the only one who has the authority to name. Adam and Eve did not pick their name. God gave them their name. He even gave Isaac his name. And I mean, he's the namer because he's the one in authority. And so guess what? If he says the Sabbath is the seventh day, no one has the authority to change it. I mean, I was raised a Roman Catholic. I even went to a seminary, and believe me, in the Catholic Catechism, they say the Pope has the authority to change it. But guess what? No one has the authority to move the Sabbath from the seventh day to any day of the week. Now, concerning the Sabbath, Isaiah 56, verse 4 and 5. For thus says the Lord unto the eunuchs that keep my Sabbaths, and choose the things that please me, and take hold of my covenant, even to them will I give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than of sons and daughters. I'll give them an everlasting name that won't be cut off. Even for non-Jews. Listen to Isaiah 66:23. It will come to pass, this is after he makes the new heavens and the new earth. It says, from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come to worship before me, says the Lord. Guess what? That won't be on the first day of the week. This is going to happen on the 7th day of the week. Of course, the new moons will be whenever they fall. Okay, Exodus 16, 22 and 23, it came to pass. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. All the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and he said to them, this is that which the Lord has said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Okay, so a time marker. Sabbath is a time marker. And we know in Exodus 20, there's the giving of the commandments. And look at this in Exodus 20, verse 2. It says, I am the Lord your God, which have brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Now, most Christians don't put that as the first commandment. They ignore it. They put the first commandment is don't, make any idols. But actually, this is the first commandment, even there's not a command there, because in Hebrew, the word is a commandment. It's word. These are the 10 words. There's no such thing as 10 commandments. It's 10 words. But anyway, it says, I am the Lord. Now, I'm going to show you something that's quite phenomenal. How many of you know what an acronym is? Here you go. I'll give you some easy ones. What does LOL mean? Or lots of laughs, however you want to say. And what is ASAP? And what is PIN? Your PIN. Your personal identification number. Okay, so we know what an acronym is, right? Well, I want to tell you something about the word I here in the commandments. There are 2 Hebrew words for I. One of them is ani. You can see ani, and that is used most often in the Bible. Almost all the time, the word ani. But there's another time where it's anoki is also the word for I, and it's rarely used, but it is used. Well, in Exodus 20, where it says, I am the Lord your God, which one do you think is used? The rare one, anoki. Why? Because anoki is an acronym. Here it is. You can see going down in red is anoki. Ana, nafshi, ketavit, yehavit. All right. So when the 10 commandments are being said, we see the I is anoki because it's an acronym. And guess what that says in English? What is God trying to express when he says, I am giving you these? That acronym says, I wrote down my very soul and I gave it to you. That's what the 10 Commandment, that acronym, I, anoki, that's what God is saying. He wrote these down. It's his very soul, and he's giving it to us. Now, let me see where I'm at. Okay, so Exodus 20, verse 8, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. What's fascinating is one of the first things that are holy is a wife who's sanctified, set apart. And to sanctify here in this word, to keep it holy, basically also means to betroth as a wife. So the Israel treats the Sabbath as a bride. It's a bride. This is why you can hardly wait for the bride to come home. Well, guess what? That's why Israel always says they're married to the Shabbat. Because it's a sign, like I said, a ring. And so Israel sees themselves as married to the Shabbat. Well, guess what? What God has put together, let no one cut asunder. We're not to be changing it to the day of chaos. We're grafted into Israel. Now, I added this verse, Exodus 31, 13 through 14. He says, my Sabbaths you will keep. It's a sign between me and you throughout your generations that you know that I'm the Lord who sanctifies you as a people. So keep the Sabbath, for it is to be holy to you. If the Sabbath, how many know the Bible, that it says the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Sabbath, if it was made for man and it is to be holy to you, then guess what that means? Without man, there's no Sabbath. There's no need for the Sabbath if there's no humans. God made it for us. The Sabbath actually is in need of you. The Sabbath is waiting for you to respond. And since the Sabbath was made for us, then there's something special it will impart to you that no other day will impart. In Exodus 31:5, it talks about how the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy also to the Lord. And so the thing going back to filling space and time, the day of the Lord is more important than the house of the Lord. Matthew 12:8 says, for the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. And Christians use that to say, well, see, he changed it to Sunday. Well, show me in the Bible where it says that. If he's the Lord of the Sabbath day, that means he has the authority over it, and he never changed it. So when we recognize the Shabbat as the seventh day, we're recognizing the Lord's authority. He's the one who named it. So by recognizing the seventh day, you're recognizing God's authority. Now, I'm just going to run through these real quick. Let's look at the Gospels. What's more important, the words you say or what you do? What you do. A lot of people say, well, the Sabbath isn't mentioned in the Bible as a command. Well, let's look at what they do. Mark 1:21. They entered Capernaum, and straightway on the Sabbath day, Yeshua entered the synagogue. Luke 4:16, he came to Nazareth, and he stood up in the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Luke 4:31, he came to Capernaum and taught them on the Sabbath days. Luke 13:10, he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. Luke 23:56, they returned and prepared spices and ointments and rested on the Sabbath day according to the commandment. So some people say, well, everything changed after the Gospels. Now we changed the Sabbath. Well, let's look what happens in Acts. And a lot of Christians say, well, I wish it was like in the book of Acts. They probably don't if they realize they kept all the feasts. Here's Acts 13, 14, and 15. They left Perga. They came to Antioch of Pisidia and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Acts 13:42. When the Jews were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath. In Acts 13:44, the next Sabbath day came, and almost the whole city was gathered to hear the word of God. Acts 15:21. Moses of old time is in every city of them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. Acts 17:2. Paul, as his manner was, he went into them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures. Acts 18:4. He reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded both the Jews and the Greeks who were meeting there. And so the fact that they're always keeping the Sabbath and they're following the Torah, there's nowhere in the Bible does it say that they changed the Sabbath. People use verses like Colossians 2 I read to think that they can change it. They're reading it out of context. Okay, Isaiah 58:13 and 14. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your own pleasure on my holy day, and you call the Sabbath a delight, holy to the Lord, it's honorable, and you honor him, not doing your own ways, not finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words, then you'll delight yourself in the Lord. He says, I'll cause you to ride on the high places of the earth and feed you with the heritage of Jacob, your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. Wow, it's for all of humanity. Okay, if you remember, I had mentioned at the beginning that in Genesis 1, only Elohim is used. And Elohim means the boss, the king, the judge, the tough guy, all right? Adam only knew him as Elohim. It wasn't until Adam sinned that he realized there was a Yahweh Elohim. The Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh name means merciful. He didn't know God was merciful. He just knew God is the king, the ruler, the boss. And that's why in Genesis 2, as soon as man is created, he's not referred to as Elohim anymore. He's Yahweh Elohim. Because he wants mankind to know he's the merciful God. And he comes on the scene at the sin of Adam and Eve. Now, here we go. Why are there 7 days in a week? When was there ever 10 days in a week? Our calendar redesign came after the French Revolution. Revolutionaries decreed the first year of the revolution as year 1. They made the week 10 days long, and this calendar endured for more than a decade, lasting until Napoleon. Underneath, we see other ancient cultures had different week lengths, including 10 days in Egypt and an 8-day week for the Etruscans. Their week was adopted by the ancient Romans, but they later moved to a 7-day week, which had spread across all of Western Asia. But it wasn't always a 7-day week. Let me see where I'm at here. Okay, so now look at this. Here's something I want you guys to know. The Psalms were their hymn book. They have specific psalms that are sung every day of the week. So if you want to write the psalm down every day of the week, you know, hey, I want to sing this particular psalm or read it. On Sunday, or the first day of the week, is Psalm 24. Monday, Psalm 48. Tuesday, Psalm 82. Wednesday, Psalm 94. Thursday, Psalm 81. Friday, Psalm 93. But guess what? Saturday is Psalm 92. How do we know that? Look at Psalm 92, a psalm or song for the Sabbath day. It's a good thing to give thanks to the Lord and sing praises to your name, O Most High. Okay. Oh, that reminds me. Here's this one verse. So here we are in Genesis 1:31, through 2:2. God saw everything he made. Behold, it was very good. Evening and morning were the sixth day. Thus heaven and earth are finished, and all the host of them. It's finished. There is no seventh day. When you read Genesis 1, there is no seventh day at all. There's only 6 days. But Genesis 2 is a recap of Genesis 1, and it carries you further. So there's 2 creation incidences. There's chapter 1, a broad view, and now we're going to find out in chapter 2 what was happening on the 6th day. Because that's when Adam and Eve sinned. They were created, and they sinned. And then it comes to the 7th day. All right? So watch how this unfolds. Here I was just talking about the Psalms, right? And they were songs. What's the Hebrew word for song? What? There's 2 words for song. There is a shir and a mitzmor. What is the difference between those 2 Hebrew words? A shir emerges from the intellect. It contains words, rhymes, poetry. You're thinking, and then you put together this song. You have the words first, and then you produce the melody. Okay? But a mitzmor is a melody like Bach or Beethoven, and it's just playing the music with no words. A mitzmor is a melody with no words. It's emotionally charged just from the soul. You following? So there's 2 different words in the Hebrew for song. One is a melody or a song with no words, and it comes from your gut, from the emotional things. Maybe you've gone through something, and so you're putting the emotions. Okay, and then this is something that, let me think, what would be a good song? But guess what? There's more. There are psalms that are shir mitzmor, and there's ones that are mitzmor shir. Which means there's a song that comes from your gut, and then the words come, and there's other ones where you plan it, and then you develop the music. What comes first, the mind or the soul? That's the difference between the 2. Well, guess what Psalm 92 is? Are you ready? Look at this. See that? Mitzmor shir. So Psalm 92 is a song that's coming from the gut, and you're passionate because something traumatic has happened, and now they're putting words to it. Okay? And it's for Shabbat. It's for the Sabbath. Who wrote Psalm 92? Nope. Oh, let me see. Oh, here I go. I went the wrong way. Who wrote it? Who wrote Psalm 92? Adam wrote it. Adam wrote Psalm 92. Okay? How do they know? Because it was being sung long before David was ever come around. This is an ancient song Israel has known forever. And Adam wrote this psalm for the Sabbath day. Because on the 6th day he was created, Adam and Eve sinned. And God said, in the day you eat of, you shall die. But guess what happened? All of a sudden, God created the Sabbath, and he could rest. And so Adam found mercy and grace on the Shabbat. Now, watch this. Psalm, let's see. Psalm 92, 1 through 3. I have the verses, how it starts. It's a good thing to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to show forth your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness every night upon an instrument of 10 strings and upon the psaltery, upon the harp with a solemn sound. It goes on. But what's amazing about this, here you're going to find all of creation sings on the Shabbat. Let me do this. Go back. Okay, let me read this. Matthew 12:7-8. He says, if you had known what this means, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. He is the Lord that determines and the one who created the Sabbath, all right? And so Adam and Eve sinned on the sixth day of creation, the same day they were created, and then God created the Shabbat because they had sinned right at evening. If you remember, they were walking in the cool of the day, the evening of the day. And that's when they blew it, and that's when God created the seventh day out of grace and mercy for Adam. Listen to Psalm 148, 3-13. Give praise to him, you sun and moon. Wow. Remember, they speak. Give praise to him, all you stars of light. The stars are praising him. Give praise to him, you highest heavens, and you waters which are over the heavens. Let them give praise to the name of the Lord. He gave the order, and they were made. He put them in their places forever. He's given them their limits, which may not be broken. Give praise to the Lord from the earth, you great sea creatures, and deep places, fire, rain, ice, snow, mist, storm, wind. Okay, doing his word, mountains and hills, fruit trees and trees of the mountains, beasts, cattle, insects, winged birds, kings of the earth, all people, rulers, all judges, young men and virgins, old men and children, let them all give glory to the name of the Lord, for his name only is to be praised. His kingdom is over the earth and the heaven. I can't help but think of Revelation 5:13. Every creature which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I say, they're all speaking, all the creatures are speaking, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sits on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever. The seventh day psalm is the first song written. The first song ever written was Psalm 92, written by Adam, thanking God for forgiveness. Now, with that said, who has not seen the video of Louis Giglio with the whales and the stars? Who has seen it? Okay, we're going to play it right now, and we're going to close with this and then the priestly blessing. But I want you to think of every Sabbath day, this is really what all of creation is doing. Well, it's only 7. Oh, you'll have to hurry. We're only playing 5 minutes, I think.
Just 2 pulsars.
These are pulsars.
And put in sync with each other. It's not a real groovy crowd, I know, but I know where I am, but it's kind of groovy if you hear it. And some of you want to nod a little bit, but you don't know if that's allowed at a Reform meeting, and so you just do as the Spirit leads. But isn't that cool? That's just 2 pulsars. And so we're going to put the millisecond guys in there. The ones you just heard, here they come.
These are like stars. They've caught stars listening.
Whales. Okay, those same whales that you just saw, undoctored and unedited, here they come. And then 16 others and some whales, and we got something going. But I was asking what you're asking because some people need it really clear. Like, what are they singing? And we tried this, and you just got to know this is unedited. We just dropped this on. And this is what happened. This is what they might be singing. With Stars in Wales?
We will.
Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God.
Sing it one more time, come on. One more time, just you and the whales. Just you and the whales. Wow, that's awesome.
Amen. Let's stand. One of these days, very soon, we will be singing with all the creatures in heaven, on earth, under the earth. They'll be playing the instrumental sounds. We'll be worshiping the Lord. Who would want to miss that day? Havinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we just love you. Put in us a desire, both to will and to do of your good pleasure. One thing we know concerning time, time is short. Now is the time. Today is the day of salvation. Father, we love the fact that you love us as your kids, and you not only want to bless us, you want to put your name upon us, which is why you told Aaron to say, Ivarekaka Adonai ve'ish mereka, Ya'er Adonai panavilecha vichuneka. Yisah Adonai panavilecha v'yasem laka shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace in that most wonderful name. Eyeh Asher Eyeh. Amen. Be blessed. Tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, and everyone going to Israel, meet right now in the other room. We have a meeting.